This is Cosmere Hot Takes, Episode 1. Today we're going to be talking about a couple of the comments that I got regarding the quality of Mistborn Era 1, the first trilogy. Parts of these comments were hot takes, in my opinion, and parts weren't. I don't think it's really, again, this is all my opinion. Let me just put a disclaimer out there. I don't think it's a hot take to say that Mistborn Era 1 is weaker compared to Era 2 and the Stormlight Archive. But the use of the word worst I saw in the comments, I don't think is applicable, and I personally rebuke that. The word worst absolutely implies that the others are bad, and I don't think that any of them are bad. I think they all have their own individual strengths, and each series so far does different things very well. Some of them do the same things well, and there are other areas in which I'm sure Sanderson as an author is lacking because he's one man. So he can't be perfect. But as far as discourse about the quality of Mistborn Era 1 compared to other series, I think Stormlight Archive is kind of like the thing that he pours the most into. It's the story that he's had always, right? Or that he's always been invested in writing. I think he wanted to write Mistborn Era 1, and then of course Mistborn Era 2 came along, which, by the way, we wouldn't have Era 2 without Era 1. And I think that a lot of things are handled so well in Era 1 to be able to be rehashed and still discussed in Era 2 that I would not have it rewritten. I wouldn't have it handled any differently. Mistborn Era 1, I think, is really strong in a lot of areas. But I don't think it's a hot take to say that it's weaker because it's his earlier work. To me, I enjoy all of his books in one way or another. Alloy of Law, for example, some people really love that book. I didn't hate that book. I thought it was fun, it was charming, but I wasn't very invested, and I will reread it because I'm going to reread all of them, but it's not like one I'm like so excited to get back into. There are parts of it that were a lot of fun. Shadows of Self, a lot of people love that book. Didn't hit me in the same way. Maybe I've started those books pretty soon after finishing Era 1, so maybe I was still reeling from Hero of Ages, and it'll be different when I go back. But I don't know, I didn't feel as strongly about it as some people do. A lot of people think it's really odd that like Shadows of Self wasn't one that I really reacted to in a similar way to a lot of other people. But I just didn't. And it wasn't because the writing was bad or because the characters weren't fleshed out. I just wasn't connecting with them yet. I didn't start connecting with them until about a quarter of the way through Bands of Mourning. And that's when I was in. But it took me getting there to be in. And that's, again, my personal experience, right? I have a hard time debating the quality of the books outside of just like, I don't know, I regard them pretty emotionally. And so it's hard for me to engage fully in a discourse solely about quality because I plan for that to be kind of the reason for my second read-throughs. Now that I know what's going to happen, I'm going to spend more time getting into the deeper analysis of the stories, which I've already gotten really far into, but that's what I want to do on my second read-through. I think that it is totally like valid and legit for people to really like Era 1 because it got them back into fantasy or because it got them into reading or because it was emotionally impactful for them. That's like not a throwaway thing. That's huge for some people. Mistborn Era 1 changes lives for a lot of people, especially for women. There are a lot of women who really identify with Vin, and we cannot throw that out of the window. Like the emotional impact of a book is just as important, I think, and sometimes even more important than like the quality and the greater context, because people need stories. That's like something that is echoed so many times in the Cosmere, is that people need stories. We need these stories, and that's why we read them. And so to me, it is totally legitimate for people to feel that way about Mistborn Era 1 or any part. I think that with Mistborn Era 1, when we judge it in the context of the other series, I think it's unfair to put it on the same level as his newer work in the way that, again, he's changed as an author. That's a hot take I have, maybe, is that like I think we need to be looking at them in that context, because I am not going to put Warbreaker, which I love, I'm not going to put Warbreaker on the same standard as far as if I were to rate the books as Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. He's a completely different author now. Well, not completely different, but he's honed his skills and he's thinking about different things and he wants to write different stories than he did then. Context matters. Context totally matters. So that's my thoughts on that. What do you think, everyone? Do you think that Mistborn Era 1 is weak or the worst of the series or something? Do you think it's weak? I personally don't. I think it's strong in a lot of ways, but I do think that when you compare it to the other two series, it's not as strong, but I do think the context matters. Tell me what you think.